Hey everyone, Austin Schneider here. Welcome to Rise Podcast, where we talk about real influence, self-development, and entrepreneurship. What's up everyone? In this podcast episode, I actually had the opportunity to be interviewed by Joey Gilkey of the Best Damn Agency podcast. He asked questions about mindset, my business, and how it operates. The Best Damn Agency podcast is a podcast that focuses on marketing agencies. So for some intel on Brandtegics and maybe a little bit of some of the clues of how we've been able to grow, check this one out.
And so I'm going to bring my man up, Austin Schneider of Brandtegics out of Bellevue, Seattle area. My man, thank you for coming on.
Dude, honor to be on the Best Damn Agency podcast. Come on.
Not many people, other than the 35 episodes or so to this point, can say they've been on the Best Damn Anything.
Gosh, what an honor.
Yeah, it should be. So maybe we'll start handing out trophies or something. But man, thanks for coming on. Our audience, bunch of agencies listening to this, from startup agencies to people in the 8 figures who listen to this. All different walks of life, all different niches, industries. You have a cool podcast that you've also launched recently. We were just talking about that in the green room. And you're really all about the personal development and the entrepreneurial journey. So I want to jump into that. But before we do, why don't you give the folks who are listening a little bit of a download on who is Austin Schneider, who is Brandtegics, what do you care about? And then we'll riff off that.
Yeah, love it, man. So Austin Schneider, Brandtegics, we are a collaborative digital marketing company just here in Bellevue, just outside of Seattle. Started it maybe about 2.5 or 3 years ago. Really just coming out of having another business in real estate and seeing the problem of social media, seeing the problem of marketing, that, there was an opportunity to really at the end of the day serve people and help them, help their businesses. As I was marketing myself in real estate, people were asking me for help and asking me, how am I doing stuff? And through mentors, which I'm sure many of the listeners have, they were able to, see a little gold in the branding space for myself and the marketing space for myself. And was lucky enough to be around those people, because that's how really Brandtegics was founded, was people saying, hey, you have a gift here, you should do something with it. So since then we've grown to about 20 full-time employees. We have about 7,000 square feet here in Bellevue, a studio. We have a production team, a graphic design team, account management team, as well as some key leaders as well. So it's been a lot of fun, and excited to share and just really provide value to the listeners and help them out. What I'm into is personal development is really big for me. My faith is really important to me. Growing is really important to me. So all those things I think are some of how you work, really. So
and I align with you in all those areas. So I think I want to take this a little bit different than like a typical agency podcast where we talk about the journey of the agency, because you guys are fairly young as an agency, right? Like you've been around a couple of years.
Yeah, just like 2.5, I think.
Right.
2020 was when we really decided to put pedal to the metal, and really it was because I was able to find somebody who was a good right hand and could help me take it to the next level.
That's huge.
Because I can only take it so far alone.
Now, what is that? Are you more that visionary type, and this is more like the integrator, implementer type?
100%. Like I can see things like in the future. I have ideas. I'm a futurist.
Yep.
Whereas Mark, who's more of my right hand, is very responsible and good at executing and trustworthy, really. So without him being on board and without really having that person that you can trust, I was kind of just floating, which was great because you make a lot of money and you have huge margins, but there's a cap. There's a cap to it for the most part. And not only a cap to the business, but a cap to the stress. Yeah. And a cap to your stress. It's like, how much do I want to take on? Yeah.
And there's a book that I've been super high on lately, Who Not How. If you guys haven't read it, you should. Who Not Hows is all about the hows in our life, like trying to figure out how to figure something out, are typically what ruin us, or at least stall our growth or stunt our growth, is and they create more problems for us, right? Like if I try to go figure how to go do what a COO should do, I'm going to create a lot of problems for myself. I'm going to hate it. I'm going to procrastinate. And procrastination is typically just your body telling you this is not in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But the who knows how to solve the problem. They already understand the how. You just got to pay the who, or partner with them, or if money's tight, then you got to figure out a way to partner strategically with them. But nonetheless, go finding the who. So for you, is finding this integrator type implementer. Same with me, right? Josh is my right hand. He's way more responsible than I am. I'm the gunslinger. Like I said, I don't script any of these podcasts. I don't do any research. I come in here and riff because that's the way I think. He's more like, I've got to have a script. I've got to do everything by the book. I need a process for everything.
Yeah.
So for you, that obviously took some self-awareness. Let's just go down that personal development path, because that's what I think is out of all the topics we talk about. Obviously, I'm a sales-driven person. That's why I like to go that route. Obviously, lead gen, win rates, conversion rates, client value, all that stuff I like to talk about. Ops, we can talk about all day long with people. Not my thing, but I can talk it. Personal development, I think, of all the topics of taking care of you, the founder, the CEO, is the most important investment you can make in your business, period. At least I would argue. 100%. One, how did you get into the world of personal development? And two, how do you define? So let's start there. How do you define personal development? And then two, how did you get into that world of like, oh, I am an asset that I should be investing in?
Yeah, man. Good question. So, I mean, I think that, so really personal development, like how do you expect to be a good leader, be a business owner, a good business owner, do cool stuff that's what people aren't doing without leading yourself. So I think really personal development is growing yourself so that you can lead yourself. It's really leading yourself, growing yourself so that you can learn, like be a forever learner, whether that's pushing yourself physically in the gym and learning more about unlocking physical barriers, whether that's reading books and learning from other people. There's just so much out there that people need to take advantage of, and really growing your mind, because everything starts with your mind. Everything starts with your mind.
Let's go to the mind, because this is one of my favorite topics. The mind, our creator created the mind, whether you want to believe that or not. That's my belief. That's your belief. Talks about faith.
Yeah.
Created the mind in such a way that I believe is to reflect the creator, right? We talk about Adam and Eve. God made man in his own image, right? Mm-hmm. We have this incredible tool that we've been given, whether it's from the universe or from God, whoever you believe. I'm going to, my God is my God of the Bible. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, there is something that created your mind. And this mind is a tool that not many of us know how to train, or even know that it is trainable. I think that's a huge one too, is knowing that just like any muscle in the body, it can be trained in such a way. So you talked about having a mentor at one point, which is influential in your path, I'm sure, down personal development. And you also mentioned being able to lead yourself. One thing that I've learned about myself is I become a better leader when I'm also willing to be led by people above me.
Big.
Right? And so I think and being led by people above you is not like a day-to-day being led when we're at our level of having millions of dollars in a business. But there are mentors and there are coaches and there's consultants and people above us that have achieved a life or an accomplishment that we want to achieve. And it takes humility to sit yourself before them. So I'm a huge proponent of that. But for you, you talk about the mind. Elaborate a little bit on the mind, because I can riff on it all day and people don't want to just hear me talk. They want to hear you talk. When you say the mind, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, everything literally starts with a belief, which leads to a thought, which leads to an action, which leads to a habit, which leads to your life. If my mind is limited, if I'm not learning, if I'm not growing my mind, then that's just going to trickle into everything, So how do I train and I look at this is the number one thing that I look into is like, how do I train my mind? 5% of leaders talk about mindset. Only 5%. We work out our muscles. Yeah. We work out at the gym, but how often are we working out our mind? How often are we telling ourselves we can do this? How often are we visualizing? How often are we reading and practicing gratitude and abundance? It's like law of attraction. The universe, people will call it that, but it's biblical as well. And it's just a powerful thing that we can control something infinite, which is our brain, which is our mind, to really attract things into our life, to grow our identity, to to think bigger, to get new ideas, and that's going to lead to bigger actions, more success, more abundance. It's wild. That's the number one thing that I look into.
Yeah, and for me, like I look at my mind as an asset, right? It's an asset that has an infinite return, right? If I invest money into it, it has a relatively infinite return. And one of my favorite quotes as it relates to personal development or mindset and things, self-limiting beliefs is, the man who thinks he can, the man who thinks he can't are both right. Right?
100%.
Very simple. But what it's really saying is what you think becomes what you believe becomes, and then the whole string of things we talked about. And so if we are setting these ceilings on our, right, we call this self-limiting beliefs. We all have them, right? No matter how advanced you are in your mindset, we all have a ceiling at some point, right? If you set goals, there's your ceiling, right? At least has the ceiling you set. If I want a net worth of 50 million, well, why don't you say 100? Why don't you say $1 billion? Why don't you say, everyone's got these self-limiting, and so some are much higher than others. For you, when was the moment you realized, oh, wow, this is super powerful. It's an asset that I should invest in. And then what was your journey of actually training that mind?
Yeah. So I think the realization was my childhood. Like I didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family. I didn't grow up in surrounded by a bunch of people, very blue collar. I wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to work construction. I just wanted to retire when I was 50. That was my belief of myself. So until I was able to surround myself with mentors, with people who were more influential in my life, that's when I began to see, hey, I'm capable of more. They were able to actually pull it out of me because my belief of myself, my mindset of myself was limited to, I'm going to retire by 60 because that's all I know. That's how I grew up, because I grew up poor and I grew up with divorced parents. I grew up with family with addiction. I grew up with, scarcity mindset. And so until I was able to meet people who were in a position that I wanted to be in, or I could see myself in, that's when I was like, oh, flip, I am capable of way more. And then secondly, podcasts, man, listening, watching videos on YouTube, feeding it, you got to feed your mind with what you listen to, what you're going to become. If you're feeding yourself with even music, if you're listening to crappy music and rap music, you just start to feel about yourself. But if you can just throw on a podcast,
self-fulfilling prophecies to some degree.
100%, man. If I can throw on a podcast and spend 45 minutes learning and growing, man, I'm going to come out of that refreshed with new ideas. Subconsciously, it's going to start changing my subconscious, which is going to affect how I see things, how I start to act. And everything literally starts with a belief. It's I can believe, I hate when people say, oh, it's just going to happen the way it's going to happen. If the universe wants it to work, it's no, dude, if we just believe that it's going to happen our way, if we just speak that, if we feel that, then it's going to happen. Even if you're not a Jesus follower like we are, it's everything starts with a belief. The universe isn't going to dictate. You got to take the step. You got to believe. Yeah. So, and it's really just the history and podcasts for sure.
Well, like you said, it's not. We want to attribute it sometimes, or people, we call it law of attraction. We call it whatever. It's this. If I believe it, the universe is going to attract those things, that which I believe to me. What's funny is that could be a way, they both get to the same destination. It's just, who's kind of behind the scenes in this thing. But what's interesting is the mind, the brain itself, if we look at it from a physiological standpoint or biology perspective, there's something called the reticular activating system.
Yes.
Which is super powerful. Ed Milet talks about this all the time. And the reticular activating system is this bundle of nerves at the top of your brainstem. Its entire job is to preserve the energy, the calories being burned by your brain. And so it is basically a filter for your conscious brain to some degree. And
100%.
It's so powerful. People don't realize this, that it's literally built into our anatomy, that we have a filter or a bodyguard, whatever you want to call it, that is filtering in and out thoughts. So we have 70,000 thoughts. Average human has 70,000 thoughts that run through our brain on a daily basis. Decisions we make, thoughts we have, etc. We're only cognizant of 1 to 10% of them at most. And so you have to then ask yourself, well, who decides which I'm cognizant of, right?
Yeah.
And so if you think negatively, all a reticular activating system does really is supports your beliefs. So that what you believe, it is going to say, oh, that's important for survival. Therefore, I'm going to filter those into the conscious brain and filter out things that don't facilitate that out. And so if we believe a negative thing, we can't do this, or I won't be able to do that, or I'll never be this, then your brain is going to facilitate that core belief.
Yes.
Through your reticular activating system. Simultaneously, if we train our brain, and how do we train our brain? We'll talk about that in a minute. But if we train our brain to think positively, we will do this, we can achieve this, I'm going to achieve that, then it will filter in things. And that's that whole law of attraction thing, right? These things attract to us. A good example, you're shopping for a car. And I believe I want a Ford F-150 to drive. I believe that. It's something I want. Great. So I start researching it. Well, you start driving on the road and you start seeing Ford F-150s everywhere. You notice the colors, you notice the different features, you notice customization is a lift. It's not like people all of a sudden went out and bought F-150s yesterday and they're all driving them. They've always been there. It's just your brain is now illuminating and showing you those things that which are now part of your beliefs. I want an F-150, therefore here are the F-150s in your life. Help you make your decision for survival. Super powerful. How do you train that? How do you train that, right? We talk about speaking into existence, but give me something practical. Like, how are you on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis thinking, facilitating your beliefs, expanding your ceiling you've set for yourself?
Yeah, I think firstly is always be learning. Like, I think that's the one thing, like listen to a podcast, read books. Secondly, like journaling. Like the only thing that's not gonna happen is the only thing that you're not actually wanting, that you're not documenting that you want, so I'm actually doing this little challenge right now where it's, okay, I'm going to write down 5 I am statements, 5 I will statements, and 5 I have statements. And that puts it out there. That lets me reflect. That lets me visualize. That lets me see. That let me think abundantly. And then as I'm putting it out there, as I'm seeing it, as I'm daydreaming it, the more it's going to attract into my life. So that's what I do is I learn and then I journal. So those are my two highly practical things. And then, having faith, man, like being a believer and just reading the Bible and like that's our truth, so not to veer too much into that, but honestly, like that's
my podcast.
That to me is, there you go. That to me is everything, man. And just knowing that we can unlock so much more that we're capable of. Like if there's one thing that, is like, you guys are capable of way more than you think you are.
Yes.
I think David Goggins talks about the governor on your, or even Ed Milet, the governor on your life. Everybody's a governor on their life. And how do we get past that? The thermostat example that he talks about, once things start heating up, you're going to sink back down to the temperature that you're comfortable with, but why don't you rise up to it? Why don't you
get around people who have a much higher
temperature
threshold
and change?
Yep.
For sure. So all of that stuff, being around people, like all of it will be super paramount. But
and like you said earlier too,
that just
like
trickles in everything.
Yeah. And like you said earlier too, with the self-limiting beliefs of even like how you grew up, right? There's nature and there's nurture, right? The nurture part of it is some of us grew up in a blue collar family like you and I, didn't have money. There was some brokenness at some point along the road. We didn't have a whole lot of people to look to necessarily, or at least we weren't taught to look for them, right? We can talk about that later. But we're putting around people who kind of had self-limiting beliefs themselves. And so therefore, if we look at them, it's why let's look at inner city, for example. Why is it that it's very difficult for inner city kids, or we can even go Appalachia kids, right? People in extreme rural settings. Why is it that it's very difficult for them to get out? It's because they don't have a whole lot to look to. They don't have entrepreneurs down the street that they can be, oh man, that's interesting. I want to go that path, right? And so we look at our nature or our nurture, the environment around us is what oftentimes creates our beliefs. And we have to, if we are part of that, we have to do the hard work of pulling ourselves out of it. And then once we can do that, go find the people that are where we want to be and go after how do we get in front of them? How do we learn from them? How do we sit at their feet? That takes humility,
Totally.
takes self-awareness.
Yeah. And I think everybody can do it by listening to podcasts, reading books. You don't need to physically hit up 20 millionaires or whatever and try to get coffee with them. Like that will come naturally, but also be humble and courageous to actually try to do that stuff. There's power in proximity. So I think 100%. That's another big thing that will change your mindset.
Like for me, when I started getting this is probably 23, 24 years old. I got thrown to the wolves and got handed a lot of responsibility in my career pretty fast. And no one taught me. I just kind of got there, and it was kind of by happenstance, or at least you and I would say it as sovereignty or provision, but providence. Yeah. But nonetheless, I got there and I'm kind of like, what do I do? And so I started just trying to reach out and learn. Like you said, I obsessed about books. And there's one point in my career where I took a VP of sales job at a small consulting firm. And I was on the road all day long. And I just started, instead of throwing on music, I would throw on a podcast. I'd throw on an audiobook. I would listen to YouTube. Yeah. And that's kind of started the journey of like being an obsessed learner for the longest time. And that eventually led me to wanting to start my own thing and create my own future instead of building someone else's. But all that to say is I didn't have the millionaire friends and millionaire mentors and millionaire coaches in my inner circle like I do now, right? The ultra wealthy, but I had them accessible through their content. And that's where you got to start. And when you do that, then those people who write the books then become your friends later on in life, which is really cool. But you got to start somewhere.
No doubt.
So
for sure.
So for you, man, like as you think about your agency, because this is for agency owners, what do you feel like was, because again, being 2.5 years old, 20 full-time employees, 7,000 square foot in Seattle, which isn't cheap. I mean, obviously you guys are doing well from a revenue perspective. What has been your journey as an agency owner? How has personal development helped your entire agency, your employees, right? Because you're the leader. So what does that look like for you as you've kind of started from nothing and then decided I'm going to scale this thing up to now 2.5 years later, 20 employees, 7,000 square foot space?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. But again, like without personal development, if I was just like, we can maybe hire like 2 people and like we'll be good and whatever, then like I wouldn't be fulfilled. It wouldn't be me. But being surrounded by people who are doing 30x, 100x what Brandtegics is doing just opens your mind to an abundance, to see the glass, like full, right? So, and just opportunities galore. But man, I think I've just learned so much just from mentors, from learning about delegating, especially like it's when we were maybe 15, 10 employees, I was still like an entrepreneur, right? Mm-hmm. I was still in it. I was still doing the work. I was still had my hands in everything, right? But now we're 20-ish, right? It went from entrepreneur to executive. Mm-hmm. So it went from grind, get business, get sales, do whatever it takes to, okay, I got people to take care of and like livelihoods, you know? And if they're not looking up to me, then they're not going to trust me for their careers. They're not going to believe that we're going to keep growing and there's like a sense of job security. Like they're not going to believe that I care for them. So now it's just a lot about the people. So a lot of my personal development has just been in leadership and making it about the people versus how can I scale? How can I blah, 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 blah. It's like, that's going to come as we take care of the people at the point that we're at, So it's been really interesting to make that transition from entrepreneur to executive and really press into, hey, it's about the people. It's not about the profit. Like if you care about the people, the patrons, the profit will come.
Love it. Austin, so on the topic of delegation, I think if you're going to be we believe in stewardship, obviously, as believers, right? So I think that if we are to be a good steward of our employees, we must also, as the leaders, be a good steward of our time. And what that means is if we as CEOs, as business owners who have people, lots of people underneath us, we are called, in my opinion, to not waste our time on low value things because there are people dependent upon us, right? What has that journey been like for you? Like you said, 10 to 15 employees, you're kind of being the entrepreneur, you're running around, you're probably doing $10, $15, $20 an hour tasks still at that time. Mm-hmm. What was it like for you as you said, you know what, though it's going to cost me money, it's more costly for me to not spend the money on someone to do this as it relates to as you started to take off and grow. So I'm assuming you're probably on a growth trajectory right now, which means 20 people is going to turn quickly into 25, then 30, et cetera. That's also a self-limiting belief that you can't find someone that can do the job as well or better than you, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think two things on delegation. So I think if someone's listening and they haven't delegated, like, you're human, so it's okay. I think when I was first starting the agency, like, I was living a little bit more close-handed and wanted it all for myself. I wanted the high profits. I was influenced maybe by stuff that I shouldn't be influenced by. Like, I was more so chasing money, I guess, to be more direct, but what that caused was stress, working 7 days a week, every single day, like, all the time, doing everything. I was on literally a treadmill. I wasn't going anywhere. I was growing, I was whatever, but it's like, I wasn't actually growing. So until I realized that it's not just about Austin, it's not about me, that's when things started to unlock. So delegating, hiring the first person, I think really the trajectory for delegation with Brandtegic and just kind of hiring was, we were just trying to figure it out. Like, we've been bootstrapped since the get-go, and we've been grateful to bootstrap. But with agency, especially, like, there's not really a blueprint of, okay, here's the org structure, here's what this person's going to do. So it's kind of been like, and in the agency world, it's very high labor, like, it requires a lot of service, a lot of time. So as we were getting all this business, like, we would be super stretched, super overwhelmed. And we're like, okay, shoot, like, what do we need to delegate? Like, that was what it was like early on. It's like, oh my gosh, like, what job position do we need to create? So that's how it started early. And then as we kind of started creeping to the 8 to 12 people, that's when we started to actually incur overhead, like, a position became overhead versus actually billable dollars. And that's when for me, it was like, okay, I can't keep burning this person out because I love them and I want to see them grow and I want to build them up. So they're actually going to go into the leadership, right? And they're actually going to oversee and be overhead technically on paper, but that's going to create more of a healthy environment for Brandtegic. Because if we have healthy employees, if we care about the people, if we're people first, if we're people centric, then that's going to lead to a successful company because it's all about the people.
Yes.
So that's really kind of the trajectory, and we're still learning, like, especially as we scale, it's like, we're trying to hire in advance as much as we can, trying to throw the train tracks to where we're headed, but it is still tricky and hard pill to swallow at times, but just have faith in the team, having faith in the team and having faith in myself that we can continue to bring business in. But ultimately, it's about the health of the people. Like, you can't have people burning out, otherwise they'll leave, and we've had that.
Now, tell me about the growth part. You just mentioned the confidence in bringing in business. What does that look like? So first of all, who do you guys serve mostly? Like, what is your main niche that you serve, if you have a specific niche? And then 2, what does growth look like for Brandtegic, for you specifically? How are you going about growing your agencies? That's what I like talking about: sales, marketing, things of that nature. So who do you serve? And then how are you getting in front of them today?
Yeah, I would say we're probably mostly small, like on paper, small service-based companies. Okay. So we have a pretty good relationship with Caliber Home Loans, where we service quite a bit of their branches and loan officers. So it's kind of like, it's a good thing for us. And then we have everything from personal injury attorneys to car washes with 16 locations to home builders to architects. So, but we like the service-based industry because we are doing a lot when it comes to branding. Okay. Not a lot of conversions, not a lot of click to this. It's more of, we're going to make you look as good as you are. That's kind of our tagline, if you would, where it's the social management content focused. And then we also have the video production end of it, which does higher video production. We have six team members over there, and whether that's one-off projects or we kind of integrate it into a full content operational CMO, fractional CMO type of content posting relationship. So what growth looks like, man, like firstly, there's just so much opportunity out there for what we're doing to help people look as good as they are online. How we're getting in front of people is I have a pretty good network here in the area, doing a little bit of cold outreach, mostly using LinkedIn, and then also practicing what I preach, creating content for myself. I think a lot of people don't buy Nike because of the brand Nike. They buy it because they saw LeBron James wearing Nikes.
Sure.
And they're like, oh, those are freaking awesome. So if I can post content, because I'm the salesperson for the most part, then people are going to naturally want to spark up conversation or see what we're doing. So also building up my brand as a salesperson and as a leader also brings in business. And mostly, man, it's been word of mouth. It's been referrals.
Yep.
We've been really lucky for that. But as of late, we've been really trying to focus on the health of the org and making sure like systems are dialed in. There's just a ton of moving parts that we got to make sure that can sustain continued growth. So
yeah, I hear that. So for you, when you're targeting, let's just say for LinkedIn outreach or however you're getting in front of folks, what is like the shtick typically for you? Right, this is where we talk high level mindset, personal development. Now we're talking more like, all right, it's how do we, if an agency owner can, obviously pay attention to the first half of the episode more than anything. If you're self-limiting beliefs, then the tactical stuff doesn't matter if your self-limiting beliefs are too low. But let's just say you get past that, and we're now talking about growth specifically, and we're talking about sales, outreach, cold outreach. What does that look like for you guys? Like, what's the stick that agencies are a dime a dozen, in terms of there's one around every corner, low barrier to entry to start. It doesn't mean you're gonna be good, right? But there's so many people who create noise in the space. So how do you stand out as an agency?
Yeah, that's good. So really kind of our shtick is going to be, typically if I'm a small business owner, I'm either going to have a marketing assistant who is juggling 30 things, who's pretty entry level or pretty subpar when it comes to marketing. Or I'm going to have zero marketing whatsoever. Or I'm going in. Okay. So what happens with that first person is they become overwhelmed, right? Like they're doing 20 different things. They're kind of ankle deep in a little bit of everything. And then they're supposed to manage their social media because that's just an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
So kind of where we come in, what we say is we're full house in-house, we're collaborative, and we can execute end to end. So where we really like to work with is that marketing person who can project manage us, right? And then we'll actually be able to do the copywriting, the posting, the content creation, the graphic design, the videography. We can do it all versus expecting this person to create content and do all that stuff. And then they end up doing it ankle deep, like not good at all. So by hiring us, we're cheaper probably than an employee from a contract perspective, but we're doing so much more. Sure. We're actually getting them results. We're making them look good. We're creating the content. We're building relationships. So that's kind of what I really try to drive into people is like, you're not going to be able to find a place like us that has access to all the resources that we do. And then your marketing person, or if you hire a marketing person, they're not going to be able to be a photographer, graphic designer, videographer, copywriter, have the systems, like all that stuff. They'll just be spread thin, or they'll be a unicorn.
Yeah. I don't talk about my other business, which is funny because it's millions more than my mastermind in the podcast, obviously. My other business, Sales Driven, is very similar. We're a VP of sales, a fractional VP of sales. We come in for a very short season. We build out the entire sales operation. We help you hire, train, and manage salespeople, and then we get out, right? You can go hire a VP of sales for 150, 180, 200 grand. They're going to move as fast as one person can move, but you have a team that comes in and builds out the same thing and knows the industry, blah, 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 at a fraction of the cost. That's when, that's the shtick, right? So same thing goes for you guys. So what for you, as you think about the future and you're like, all right, Brandtegic, year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, do you have a big goal? Like, all right, do you have like, here's where I'm trying to take this thing? And then the follow-up question to that is going to be, okay, based on where I want to take this, what are problems that you're having to solve today or soon in the future in order to get there? I think it's important for us to think through, especially the listeners. They learn just as much from our wins or successes, but also how we're thinking about how to jump over hurdles and how we're solving problems and things of that nature. So 1, where are you heading? 2, what are some things that you're trying to solve that are in the way of that?
Yeah, great questions, and love thinking and talking about the future. So for Brandtegics specifically, man, like we want to really keep growing. I think right where we're at right now is we're dialing in our systems in order to expand. I mean, I think there's 30 million businesses in the United States, and guess how many need social media? 30 million of them. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to get market share. So I think that's number one. And then to piggyback off of that, when it comes to problems, is one, Brandtegic is not cheap. We're very labor intensive. So how do we almost productize some services to make it more achievable for everybody? So maybe that's a SaaS product. Maybe that's better delegation at an easier price point. Yeah. So how do we create some sort of more achievable product or service to really help more people? Mm-hmm. So maybe like that's a DBA. Exactly, because they have 450 employees, but they're in the Philippines, right? So how do we do something like with social media? We just do what we're doing, and we just kind of scale it down. So not to give anybody any ideas, but kind of that's really something that it's really a product of what we're seeing in the market. Like not everyone can afford our retainer, so it's like how do we help just more people? And we have the systems, and we've done it so much that it's like kind of a low hanging fruit for us, kind of a layup. But in the meantime, just trying to keep our vision on Brandtegic and growing the systems here. And there's just huge opportunity right now. But I think like you look at people like VaynerMedia or these huge agencies that have a couple hundred employees, and it's like, man, like if that doesn't fire me up, I'm stoked about that. Like,
there's your ceiling, right?
If we could employ a couple hundred people, how freaking cool would that be?
Yeah, you're creating jobs. You're helping a lot more clients. The hard part we run into too is like for me, I can't help every agency. Like it's just impossible. And to be honest, I've gotten to a point in my career where I just don't want to. Right? I'm not trying to be, but I have other priorities. Right? I got a kid, I got a wife, I got a family, I got community, I got my church, I got everything that around me that I care about that have a higher priority in some degrees in some areas of life. But for me, I had to make the choice of either I help more people or I help a select few people, but I charge a lot more because my abilities are limited. And so I think for you, you're talking more about market share, meaning quantity of people, and lowering client value, but upping the amount of clients, which is a different way of thinking. And that requires a lot more process and systems and that kind of stuff.
For sure. It's definitely more of I'm going to tee this up to potentially sell it. I'm going to tee it up to merge with someone or whatever it is, where Brandtegic is my baby. It's like, I like love what I'm doing here. And like, it's the first ever company, and I've learned so much that it's going to allow me to be successful in other ventures that I decide to do. So
love it. Well, man, I want to get you out of here. Before I do, I want to push you into the round of random. 6 random questions I send I don't send, I guess. You don't know anything about it. But I throw them in front of you, spitfire. I want to hear your answers off the cuff. And then we'll get you out of here and point people to where they can connect with you and listen to your podcasts, get involved with Brandtegic and things of that nature. So, my man, you ready for the round of random?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. All right, if you could leave where you're at right now in Seattle and COVID's not an issue, everything's back to normal, you can go anywhere in the world, where are you going right now? For an extended vacation.
Extended vacation, probably Amalfi Coast.
Where's that at?
Yeah, I think it's like Europe.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
Like the coastal Europe cities.
Yeah,
like, man, never been to Europe. So
have you not? Oh man, my wife and I, we love the Dalmatian coast, which is the Adriatic Sea. It's across from Italy. It's in Croatia. Croatia is our favorite place on earth. It's basically you get Mediterranean vibes, you get Italian food, and you get the cheapness of, a second-rate European country, which is awesome.
Nice.
Just gorgeous.
Yeah. We've been like Fiji, Hawaii, Mexico, but it's like I'm ready to go to
Europe.
Freaking Europe. Yeah.
All right. If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, living or dead, past or present, one person, who are you sitting down with and why?
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
Talking about mentors, huh?
Oh, there's just too many to name. First person that came to my mind was John Maxwell.
What about John Maxwell? Just because his leadership?
Yeah, like I just love his story, and he's all about people, and he's really influenced myself in Brandtegic in many ways. So, to get an hour of his time over a meal would be phenomenal.
Love it. If you could build another business, can't be an agency, can't be a SaaS product spinoff of your agency. Now that I know that's on your plan, what would you build? Why would you build it? And caveat, money doesn't matter. Meaning your startup capital, whatever. It is what it is. You need X amount, you get it. And if you don't want to make money with your business, it's more of a passion play, that's cool too. You decide your rules here. But what would you start, if anything, other than agency?
Probably something with like real estate development. Like I love the business of real estate.
Yep.
And I just think that's such a wealth creation and just fun. Like I think like architecture is really interesting and design is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I love that side of it. So
you and me both, man. I'm currently sitting in $1 million of my net worth in this building.
There you go.
That also pays me cash flow every month. It's weird how that works.
Yeah. And it's the visionary in us, right? It's like we can see things and like we want to see it come to life. So
yeah, this building's had a real cool story. I'll have to tell it in another podcast, but it was a dump that I renovated and architected, and now it's half of our headquarters that also happens to pay me with part of the building. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you.
All right, if you and I went out to dinner anywhere in the world, any restaurant, I'm paying, where are we going?
We are going to go to, it's a good question. Somewhere with steak and somewhere with an ocean view. So I don't know exactly what that is yet, but
probably in San Diego.
Maybe like Eddie V's or like George's.
There we go. George's. There we go. I actually did a mastermind dinner at George's.
Nice.
Right before COVID hit last year. All right. What are you irrationally passionate about outside of business? And I'm going to go ahead and throw in personal development. You can't say that either. So for some people it's Star Wars, sports teams, whatever. What is your thing?
Yeah. I think fitness, if that's not under the personal development category.
That works. We can go fitness.
Like love fitness, love running.
Got a fitness
meditative for me.
You like ultra marathons, CrossFit,
running. Yeah. Running and just like ways to like really get those endorphins high.
Love it. Yeah. We're going to link to all these things, but where can people find out more about you? If you want to plug the podcast, this is the place to do it. Where are people finding you online?
Yeah. Instagram's probably the best bet, at Austin R. Schneider. You can DM me. You can check out the agency. It's at Brandtegic, brandtegic.co. Happy to brainstorm with you guys. Would love to hear from you guys. I don't know a ton of other agency owners, probably at the level that you guys are interviewing. So if you're listening and want to network and collaborate, let's freaking do it.
Let's freaking do it. Join my mastermind.
There we go.
We'll link to it.
Come on.
We'll link to it, man. Brother, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, one thing just to add, I'm not in your mastermind, but that is extremely powerful. Like, it's scientifically proven being around people who are also thinking big and also where you want to be is going to help you neurologically get there.
Yeah.
And physically get there.
Because I've spent probably $500,000 in the past 4 years on my own masterminds, or not mine, but the ones that I've been in, and it's been super influential for me. And I'm gonna always plug my mastermind because I believe in it. But
and if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't have a network, I don't know anybody, join the mastermind. Like just because it's going to be so powerful to be around it. And just from your conversations and the research that I've done on you, it's a real thing. And it's an investment on yourself, that I think is totally worth it 100% of the time.
Thank you. Thank you for the plug. I will always take a plug. My man, thank you for coming on. Humbled that you'd share. Man, if people could take anything away from this, my favorite is just invest in the asset that is your mind, and pay attention to that thing that God created, whoever you want to give or attribute to creating that powerful thing in your head. Invest there. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on. Honor.
Everyone, thank you so much for watching and listening to the Rise podcast. Please do me a favor and subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. Share it with a friend if you think it was valuable, and also give it a thumbs up. If you want more content, feel free to follow me on Instagram at Austin R. Schneider, where I'll be dropping snippets of this and other type of content. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel and be on the lookout for weekly podcast episodes just like this one. Thanks, everyone.